on. What's up, everybody? For those of you that will see this before the market, it is just after midnight here. Was planning on trying to get this up earlier, but the upside of doing it later, I got to add in the threshold list little caveat that I noticed because it updated around like 11:30. But I've been cranking through all the numbers again, and I just kind of go through each one of these stocks. I rewrite down all of the 5 main things that I look at: outstanding shares, free float, utilization, short interest, and cost to borrow. And I go through each one of those stocks on Ortex, and I go through all that data and I compare it to the numbers that I wrote down the previous time. Take a peek at the threshold list to see if there's been any changes, and then I present it to you. So I'm Mike, that was Mongo. I pitch myself as a rookie trader because I've only been in the game since March, and I usually mention that I have lost more than I have gained. The reason why I do that is to let everyone know that, hey, I've learned the hard way. I've been burned, and the idea behind a lot of this is to hopefully present other people with information that helps them from having to learn that same hard way. But let's get into the data. So first and foremost, want to start out with AMC. Today was something. So the thing that I noticed going through the data today, not only did we get a +3 on the 3 main things that I look for in utilization, short interest, and cost to borrow. When it's a +3, it usually piques my interest on what's going to happen the next day. When those 3 categories are all trending upward, it's usually something that sticks out to me. The other thing that I noticed is it's currently at its 3rd highest estimated short interest percentage of free float in like that 3-month chart that I was looking at. So that's also something that, like, I noticed that we were getting closer and closer, and then when it hit that 3rd spot, it's also getting more media coverage with the Adam Aaron releasing a commercial, and that's getting a lot of talk. Not to mention that the price is sitting right under that 50 mark. I know that we did fall a bit in after hours, but I'm excited to see what happens in the pre-market. And then tomorrow and the day after should be really interesting. But I will warn, do not play super short options unless you're willing to risk losing all of that. If you are getting in, get out. You may have to deal with one of those day trades, but be careful if you've had too many day trades that you could get hit with a pattern day trading lockup. Depending on your brokerage, they only allow a certain amount of day trades if your account is under 25,000. So just be careful with that. But to get on to, I guess, some of the other like main plays, these are ones that if you are watching my channel, you probably have definitely seen other channels talking about them. ATER, which I've mentioned before. It's kind of neat to see that I put this on someone's radar and that he's already made some gains on this. So that just made me feel like there's actually a point to this, that other people are benefiting. So ATER, BBIG, SPRT, those are like 3 big ones that are getting talked about a lot. The reason why they're getting talked about a lot is because they're all high utilization, high short interest, high cost to borrow. And they're trending in short squeeze potential areas. SPRT looked like it already had a short squeeze, made a lot of people a lot of money in a very short amount of time. And then people got out thinking that that was the squeeze. And then now looking through the numbers, the shorts didn't really cover. if anything, they've doubled down. That was just one giant big gamma squeeze where everyone poured into the options market and the options chain, and because those calls were out of the money were coming into the money, market makers had to hedge for that, and so they had to buy up those shares, and it created this big giant whirlwind up, which is always something that we look for to capitalize on the way before it gets up, and then as it's at the top, hopefully you can cash in. But my recommendation is always cash in on the way up, so then you know that you're always leaving with some kind of profits. But to get into the data on some of these, ATER, the utilization is up. It's got a +3 from numbers from yesterday. Utilization up to 99.42. Short interest 66.49, which is up, and then cost to borrow 101.67, which is up. And then if you've noticed in a lot of my channels or a lot of my videos, if the cost to borrow is over 100%, I'm really starting to open my eyes. If it's over 200%, I'm like very keen on getting in on that play, just because the interest on that, to borrow those shares, to short those shares, when that climbs to such a high level, it really puts some heat on them. And then any kind of price movement upwards, I feel like that just makes them even more likely to pull out. But so not only did ATER get a +3 in the categories that I really focus on, but it also just got added to the threshold list. Comparing it to the threshold list last week and some of the updated marks that I've had on the list, the list has been updated and ATER is on it now. So that's something that really sticks out to me. Usually that's like the cherry on top on a play that I want to make a move on. And with ATER, it has not only a really good setup, but it also is on the threshold list. So if you don't know what the threshold list is, again, I've mentioned it in previous videos, it has to do with failure to delivers. It's usually when a bunch of shares are getting, from what I've gathered so far, it's from a lot of the time when there were a lot of borrowed shares and they don't buy the shares to back up the shares. It's a market maker like thing that happens. They try to say that it's like, oh, there's some mix up with the stock plumbing, and it ends up being something that they're really, I think, is a little bit more on the nefarious end with the FTDs. And when the stock starts to really move, then they sit on that FTD list for too long, that threshold list for too long, then they get forced into like delivering on those shares, which means they have to buy those shares, which then cause even more buying pressure. And the cool thing about ATER, with only 35.14 million shares outstanding and only 60% of that being their float, that's the more that this gets poured into, the more volatile it'll get. Moving on, BBIG, the utilization 99.67, which is up from yesterday. 37.93 on the short interest, which is up from yesterday, and 270.4% average cost to borrow. That is up from yesterday. So it's got a +3 on my main categories. Plus, it is also still on the threshold list. It's had some really good movement this week and last week, if you've been able to capitalize on it. But I don't feel like it's over. I feel like it's got to have one of those big arching movements up and a big spike coming for it soon. So if it does start moving and you're not in on it yet, try not to chase it. Try to look for an entry point. Look at the RSI to cool off at some point. Look at it to the MACD to kind of switch over or cross for a little bit. Just don't chase the play because you don't want to top tick a play. SPRT is also another big one that everyone that I've mentioned before that a lot of people have made money on. It's getting set up for another big run. Utilization 95.92, which is up from yesterday. Short interest 82.58%, which is up from yesterday. And then cost to borrow 142.39. That is down from yesterday, but it is still really high, and it is still on the threshold list. A couple highlight items that I have. CRCT is still set up for a play that I like a lot. The utilization's up from yesterday, 99.53. Short interest, 26.32, which is down a bit from yesterday. And then cost to borrow, 28.1, which is down also a bit from yesterday. CRSR is another one that I'm keeping an eye on. 100% utilization, 30.69% short interest, which is up, and then 9.54 average cost to borrow, which is up. So that had a +3 in the three categories that I'm looking at. So that one, I'd be really interested to see what happens with that. XBIO, which is a newer one on my watch list. The short interest on that one is only 1.85%, which is super low in comparison to a lot of these plays. But utilization's 97.81, which is up from yesterday, and then the average cost to borrow is 197.07, which is actually down a bit from yesterday. So it's not a big play that I'm watching, but the outstanding shares was only 9.7 million, and 92% of that, so still well under 10 million outstanding shares. So that's a very small amount. So any kind of attention into that one could cause it to move pretty violently, and the high cost to borrow is really what kind of sticks out for that one for me. MVST, 99.35% utilization, which is up from yesterday. 5.31 short interest, which is again like a lower short interest in comparison to a lot of these other plays, but that 5.31 is up from yesterday, and the cost to borrow is 262.42, which is up from yesterday. So it has a +3 in those three main categories, and it's just because of that and because of the high cost to borrow. I just want to keep an eye on that one, because if people do start to get out of that one, even though it's only 5.31% of like 150 million. That's a lot of buying pressure to get out in a short period of time. Let's see. And then my sleeper list, I just kind of keep adding to, and I do track a lot of other stocks. So try to understand that these are just the main ones that stick out to me the most that I'm trying to bring to you guys. But if you want me to cover any other ones, just comment down below. But part of my sleeper list that I've mentioned already, because I got into them today, is JOBY. That one has 100% utilization. It is a very small short interest of 2.47, but that is up from yesterday. And the reason why I'm in on this one is because of that 270.52 average cost to borrow, which is up from yesterday. So a +3 on that one. And so that one I'm looking at for potential movement. Let's see, BGRY, it only has 16.19% free float. Short interest 97.60, which is up from yesterday. Short interest 4.53, which I know it's low, but that's up from yesterday. The cost to borrow 308.41, which is up from yesterday. Anytime cost to borrow is over 300%, I am really watching that play, or I'm in on that play just to see what happens. Let's see, FTFT is one that's newer on my list. That one's utilization has climbed up into 99.89. The short interest 12.38, and the cost to borrow, average cost to borrow, is small at 4.92, but that high utilization and that +3 on those categories from yesterday makes me just kind of want to pay attention to that one. LIDR is a play that I don't have all of the information on. The weird thing with Ortex on that one is it doesn't show me the short interest, but the utilization's 100%, and the cost to borrow has skyrocketed. That one's 257.28. So that one I'm going to keep an eye on. If that one starts to make any kind of movement, I might jump in for a real quick play. Flying into that one blind without knowing the short interest kind of irritates me, but I'll try to see if I can find any more information on that one. FFIE is one that I might have mentioned last night. I believe I got into that one this morning. The utilization on that one is 99.99, which is down just a hair from yesterday. Short interest is up from yesterday at 10.65. Cost to borrow 240.58, which is up from yesterday. Let's see. The new one that I found tonight that I'm looking for potential tomorrow, SQBG. That one really sticks out to me because outstanding shares 1.66 million. One of the smallest outstanding share plays that I have on my lists, or either of my lists. 78% of that free float. So very, very small amount of outstanding shares. So any kind of movement into that one, I feel like would cause some very big moves, big spikes. Utilization 95.96. Short interest 27.16. And cost to borrow 63.34. I don't know how that compares to the previous numbers because that one just recently got added to my list. But that covers most of my sleeper list, or at least the main ones that I'm looking for at tomorrow. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, I am not a pro. I am not a financial advisor. I am no expert in any way. But I have been taking this data and then comparing it to charts and a variety of other trends and stuff like that to get an idea of how to make plays, to make money. There's no guarantee in anything, and my main thing that I always try to mention is have a plan, stick to that plan, know your risk, and don't get greedy. So from this rookie investor and my passed out dog, Mongo, good luck in the market tomorrow. Or, well, in 9 hours. Peace.